4, hope you're all okay and you're staying safe. First of all, I just wanted to say a massive well done for all of the work that you've been doing. I've loved looking at the pictures of you doing different activities and doing different pieces of learning, so well done, keep it up. Before we broke up, we were reading Beetle Boy by M.G. Leonard, and I thought we might not get a chance to finish it off this year. So, if we don't, or in case we don't, I thought I could read a bit to you instead. So, today I'm going to read a bit of the next chapter from page 45, so if you've got it at home you can follow along. If not, you can just listen and we can read it together. I thought it would be nice. Okay, so I'm starting on page 45. Darkus took out his key and opened Uncle Max's front door, climbing the 3 flights of stairs to the attic. "This is my room, Baxter," he said, turning on the light and walking to the photo hanging on the wall. "That's my dad. You'll like him. He's always telling me not to squash insects." He stared at the picture in silence for a moment. "He says you should never take a life, no matter how small. He won't even let me kill the slugs in the garden." The beetle's wing sheaths flickered over and closed rapidly. The insect seemed oddly overexcited, and Darkus moved away in case the giant 2-dimensional human face was frightening the beetle. "I sleep there," he pointed at the hammock, "and that's it really. It's small, but it's better than living up somebody's trouser leg." He sat down on the floor, putting the beetle on the makeshift table and leaning in to study it closely. It was pretty hairy in places, and its armour-plated underbelly reminded Darkus of a crab's. Its front legs had hinged kneecaps, but its back legs were chunkier and stretched out almost in a straight line. The beetle suffered the inspection, staring back at him, unblinking. Darkus had never been afraid of insects, but it hadn't occurred to him that you might have one as a pet. He wondered if Uncle Max would let him keep the beetle. It was pretty cool, and he'd liked how it had felt when Baxter was sitting on his shoulder. "Come on," he scooped up the beetle. "Let's go down to the kitchen and find out what you eat." "I'm home," Uncle Max's voice came up the stairs. "In the kitchen," Darkus called back, picking Baxter up off the table. "Good news," Uncle Max cried as he burst into the room. "I've got us an appointment at the museum." He stopped speaking when he saw what Darkus was holding in his hands. "What's that?" "It's a beetle," Darkus lifted it up. "Isn't it cool?" Uncle Max stared at the insect and then at Darkus. "Where did you get it?" "In the street. It climbed onto my hand." Darkus pulled his hands into his chest protectively, surprised by the tone of his uncle's voice. "I tried to let it go, but it won't leave me alone. It seems to like me." "Here, outside in the street?" Uncle Max's shoulders dropped. He seemed to relax a bit. "Yes, just crawling around all on its own." Darkus looked at the floor. He felt bad not telling his uncle the whole truth. "How strange," Uncle Max's voice sounded distant, as if he was thinking about something troubling. "What did you say about the museum?" Darkus asked, changing the subject. "Ah, yes." Uncle Max's finger shot up in the air. "Tomorrow, my lad, you and I are going to take a look inside that vault." "Really?" Darkus's heart leapt. "What about school?" "Hang school!" Uncle Max swiped the air in front of his face. "Barty's more important." "Who's Barty again?" "That's right, his dad." "Yes," Darkus nodded, "he is." Uncle Max narrowed his eyes. Looking at the insect, Darkus was clutching to his chest. "I wonder who the beetle belongs to," he said. "Perhaps it doesn't belong to anyone." "There'll almost certainly be an owner, my lad." "A rhinoceros beetle like that one." "A rhinoceros beetle?" Darkus put the beetle back down on the table and looked at his uncle. "That's the common name for a horned beauty like that chap." Uncle Max leant over. "I must say, he is a handsome specimen, and you can tell he is a he because females don't have the tusk." He pointed with his little finger. "He's not a native Londoner. He's probably from the Amazon or the Far East. You'd pay a pretty penny to buy him in a pet shop, and even then..." Uncle Max's forehead creased. "I'm not sure it's legal to trade this species." "Can I keep him?" Darkus asked, pleading with his eyes. "Someone might be out looking for him." "Please!" If anyone comes knocking saying they've lost a rhinoceros beetle, you'll have to give him back. I know, I will, I promise. Darkus held his breath, hoping. Well, please say yes. There was a long pause, and Darkus thought he might burst. I suppose he can stay with us for now. Uncle Max's frown melted as Darkus' sombre face was transformed by a smile. I suppose a pet would be good company for you whilst I'm at the university, he sighed. Have you already given him a name? Darkus nodded. Baxter, like the soup. I like the sound of that. Uncle Max nodded his approval. It's a good name for a beetle. I've never had a pet before. Darkus gazed happily at Baxter. Thank you. It's all right, lad. Uncle Max threw his hands up in defeat. I can hardly say no when I know Barty would say yes. Darkus looked up surprised. He would? Of course. A handsome hexapod like this. He'd be doolally about it. Darkus frowned. His dad cared greatly about the environment, recycling everything and using minimal energy. He watched birds in the spring and grew vegetables for their dinner table, often lecturing him on the benefits of spiders, but not once, ever, could Darkus remember him talking about liking beetles. What do you mean? Oh, sorry, a hexapod is a creature with six legs. No, I mean what you said about Dad being doolally about Baxter. Well, it's obvious. Barty's obsessed with beetles. Uncle Max seemed perplexed by the confusion on Darkus's face. And Baxter, well, I haven't seen a finer specimen, so it's only natural that he would be crazy about... His voice petered out. Dad's obsessed with beetles. Darkus felt odd inside as he watched his uncle realise this was something he didn't know. Doesn't he ever take you insect hunting? Uncle Max asked weakly. No. Darkus shook his head and searched his memory for any time that his dad had talked to him about insects. He tells me I shouldn't kill spiders, though. Oh, well, I suppose it was a long time ago. Perhaps he grew out of it. We were kids after all. Uncle Max looked deeply uncomfortable. And he's right, you shouldn't kill spiders. As he and his uncle stared at each other across the table, it dawned on Darkus that he'd stumbled upon some kind of secret, and he didn't know what to say. He couldn't think why liking beetles would be something Dad should keep from him, and the fact that his dad had secrets stung inside. Uncle Max slid his chair back from the table and disappeared out of the room without saying a word. Darkus took a deep breath and blinked back tears. He'd had the best day in ages, making friends with Virginia and Bertolf, and then finding Baxter, and now suddenly he felt all horrible again. Uncle Max was back, clutching an old red book with a gold stag beetle embossed on the front cover. If you're going to look after Baxter properly, you'll need this, and he slid it across the table. Darkus opened the cover. It was a fragile old book, and some of the pages were loose. The title page said, The Beetle Collector's Handbook. In the top right-hand corner, in a child's handwriting, was written, Bartholomew Cuttle, age 9. Flicking through the pages, Darkus saw that the book listed the various families of beetles and had colour pictures on pages protected by tissue paper. He found an illustration of a rhinoceros beetle and looked up at Uncle Max. Dad loves beetles? Uncle Max nodded. Ever since he was a boy, he's been fascinated by them. Darkus looked at the rhinoceros beetle sitting quietly on the table. I am too. Barty became something of an expert. He worked in the field for a while. You can become an expert on beetles. Darkus had never heard of such a job. Uncle Max laughed and nodded. That's what I'm going to do then. Darkus closed the book and hugged it to his chest. Uncle Max ran his hand along the top of Darkus's stubbly head. You may look like your mother, but you are just like Barty. But I don't understand. Why didn't he tell me? That's not for me to say, lad. It was all a long time ago before you were born. You'll have to ask your father about it when we find him. Uncle Max leant down and opened the cupboard below the sink, lifting out a rectangular fish tank. Now, when I was young, I was crazy about terrapins. I had 2.
Howard and Carter, adorable fellows, and this, and he set the aquarium down on the table, was their home. He scratched at a crust of algae with his thumb. It needs a bit of a clean, but it might make a good home for a beetle.
For Baxter, Dorcas stood up.
Yes, Uncle Max smiled. Dorcas carefully placed the red book in the tank and wrapped his arms around it, lifting it against his chest. Thank you, we'll wash it away, won't we? We'll wash it right away, won't we, Baxter? Careful, it's heavy. I've got it. Dorcas shuffled towards the door. Come on, Baxter. Baxter's wings rattled like helicopter blades as he lifted off the kitchen table and landed neatly on Dorcas's shoulder. Uncle Max's jaw dropped. Good Lord! I know, Dorcas said from the hall. He looks too heavy to fly, doesn't he? The door closed, leaving Uncle Max standing in the middle of the kitchen, stunned. He rubbed his hands over his face and sat down, his mind reeling. He'd seen a beetle respond to a human command once before, many years ago, in Bartholomew's laboratory, and he'd done his best to forget that it had ever happened. He shook his head. He must have imagined it. What with all the talk about Barty in the past, he was getting jumpy. Barty had promised Esme he'd never go back to the abominable work he'd done for the Faber project. But Esme was dead, and if his brother had returned to research, what did that mean? Was it connected to the sudden disappearance? Max looked up at the ceiling. None of this made any sense. If Dorcas's rhinoceros beetle had anything to do with the Faber project, how did it come to be on Nelson Parade? That's the street where they were living with Uncle Max. And the project had been shut down for over 10 years now. Professor Appleyard was retired, for goodness sake. He was imagining things. The beetle couldn't have been responding to Dorcas. It was just following him out of the room. But even that, Max knew, went against the behavioural patterns of an insect.
So I'm going to finish there for today. We'll finish the rest tomorrow of that chapter and then maybe start the beginning of the next one. Thank you very much for listening. As a bit of a challenge in between now and then, if you haven't already researched rhinoceros beetles for your homework a couple of weeks ago, then have a go at researching a rhinoceros beetle. Think about all the different features that a rhinoceros beetle has. So it's got really shiny back, it's got orange hair under its arms, all of these different things. Have a little look at it and then see if you can have a go at actually sketching the picture. And if you're happy with what you've done, then send it to me. I'd love to see it. Okay.